So, in traditional education, the teacher is the main source of knowledge or the authority figure. So, in this role, the teacher controls the whole learning environment. They hold the power and responsibility in imparting knowledge to her students by giving lectures, by using books in discussing the lessons. In traditional education, teacher is the only one who give lectures and students learn. Therefore, we can actually say that teacher are the main source of knowledge because students learn only from their lectures. Well, the second rule in traditional education is that the teacher is the decision maker for taking the decision of what to teach and how to teach. In this role, the teacher decide what content they will teach the students and in what way they will deliver those contents, usually based on predetermined set of academic standards and skills that are measured by means of taking exam or written test. So, as opposed to that, in outcome-based education, the teacher is the facilitator of knowledge. So, in outcome-based education, the teacher is a facilitator of knowledge or serve as guide who stimulates thinking by providing an enriching classroom interaction. Teachers provide meaningful opportunities for creative play, exploration, experimentation, and critical thinking activities, making the students co-facilitator of the teaching learning process by the use of technology. And the next role of the teacher in outcome-based education is that teacher supports students' progress. So in this role, the teacher is the expert on what works best for her students. The teacher should provide useful feedback to help develop students' progress in outcome-based education. Teacher supports students to make meaning through their learning and understand the value of the knowledge and skills they develop by the use of various sources through technology. And support students to set personal learning goals that are realistic, meaningful, and challenging.
Another thing about outcome-based education is that it does not specify to any particular style of teaching. This means that educators are just free to choose their own style or way of teaching the students. And it does not matter how they do it as long as in the end, learners will be able to acquire or learn the things that they really need to learn. Instead of just listening and learning, outcome-based education demonstrates to students what they are capable of. So this basically means that whatever talents or capabilities students have, they actually have the chance to exploit or improve it. And in traditional education, students are expected to just listen, so there isn't any activities for them to gain hands-on experience. And also in the traditional education, the method of instruction is usually oral, so the teachers talked about the subject while the students learned, assessed, and memorized, and that's all they have to do. So that means that the students don't really have any chance to harness or improve their skills or capabilities.
So in this part, we are tasked to list down 3 course outcomes that we should acquire after taking the core subject, which is Assessment in Learning 1. Okay, so first, we have measure our students or our future students' learning through various assessment tasks. For example, we have written works, oral participation, performance tasks, and projects, and etc. This outcome will be acquired because we are already knowledgeable on the fundamentals and how to assess our students' learning abilities. Second, we have discover and utilize the assessment task that are relevant to the subject and the topic being taught, and use only those that are in alignment for the maximum effectiveness. Okay, so this outcome is possible because we as future educators are taught on how to assess and utilize the tasks that are given to us so that we'll be able to teach our future students. Lastly, we need to learn the mathematical ways in computing our students' scores and their equivalent grades. Okay, so educators as we are, we need to know how to compute scores and grades of our students because it is the nature of being an educator. So we are expected to be knowledgeable enough in solving grades, and with the help of this core subject, we will be assist.
So for my given task, it would be picking out in the items PO14 and PO16. And as you can see, I have picked the items that the certain topics that would be presented in the answer. So my comment would be regarding the context of the test given is that if provided with enough and sufficient attention and guidance throughout the process of having the program occurrence, it would be most likely that the goal that was mainly the objective of the program would be reachable, and the students will learn everything included in the program as well. Because as mainly this is a program outcome based test. And let's take for example in the case of item PO16, in which student will be more efficient in linguistics and its structures. For example, understanding semantics is a branch of linguistics and reach expertise in the topic.
So we have task number 2. I have to pick out course outcome 1 and comment on how the statement is phrased and how it is aligned to the program outcomes identified. So I chose the course outcome 1, which is to explain critically the processes, factors, as well as the aspects of language acquisition, linguistic change, and font of program outcomes 14 and program outcomes 16. And my comment on how the statement is phrased and how it is aligned to the program outcomes 14 and 16. So the learning outcome is well written and specific because the goals are stated clearly and directly, and learners can easily understand what is expected to learn and what to do during the learning process. The learning outcome is created in a smart way where it is specific, measurable, attainable, and completely relevant and related to the program outcomes. And learning outcomes aligns in a way that all program outcomes in both 14 and 16 should include and emphasize the process. Should emphasize the learning process. And as we can see in the part where it is stated, explain critically. So there should be an active participation, whether through oral or written outputs in sharing information about language acquisition and functions. And the two program outcomes can be achieved once the learning outcome will be formed successfully by the teacher, or when the learning outcome will be performed successfully by the teacher.
The first CLO on the intended learning outcomes is explains the worldviews hinged on the Sapir and Whorf hypothesis perspective, while the second CLO on the intended learning outcomes is compare and contrast cultures with respect to language use. So, the process explains of creating thoughts and efficient use of language. The phrases are something that one would actually curious or wants to learn, since it explains the relationship of language towards one's culture, or the effect of culture towards language. It is also aligned on the course outcomes since I do really believe that it will be a great help for me in achieving the intended learning outcomes.
For number 4, comment on the alignment among the intended learning outcomes, teaching learning activities, and the assessment tasks. Okay, so my answer for this is, or my comment for this is that it is good that each of the ILOs, TLAs, and ATs are aligned to each other because it creates an organized way of learning for the students. Moreover, it enhances learning as it adds relevance between the objectives and task activities. So to further explain my answer or my comment why I stood that it is good for each of these three to be aligned to each other, I will be showing you the given ILOs, the given TLAs, and the given ATs. So these are the givens. So the first intended learning outcome is explain world views hinged on the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis perspective. So in this intended learning outcome, we need to give attention to the word explain. So the students here are to explain. So in this case, we, the teacher, need to find an activity or an assessment in which we can see if the students could explain. So there are numerous options, but the given assessment task here is written exam. So it is good because if it is written, then for example, if it is an essay type, the student can express their ideas and opinions regarding what is to be explained. And the teaching learning activity here is buzz session. So since it's about explaining, it's about explanation, so the buzz session here is very effective. And if you don't know what a buzz session is, it means that there will be a short discussion about the topic, and there will be activities such as groupings in which each members of the groups need to give their contributions and share their knowledge. It's somewhat like brainstorming and sharing of knowledge for them to learn. Next intended learning outcome is compare and contrast cultures with respect to language use. So again, the word or the words that we need to pay attention here is compare and contrast. So in this intended learning outcome, the student is intended to compare and contrast. So again, the teacher needs to think of what assessment task can he or she use in order to evaluate if the students can compare and contrast. So in this case, the given assessment task is alternative performance, which is perfect because as you can see here, it is comparing and contrast. So when we say alternative performance, it is an assessment that doesn't just involve the student demonstrating knowledge but also executing tasks. So for example, the students will not just be discussing or sharing the comparison between cultures with respect to language use, but also the students themselves will be demonstrating how they are compared and how they are in contrast with each other, how they are related. So the student can do that in numerous ways. So for example, the student can act out and compare it. So yeah, it is perfect for this intended learning outcome. And the last intended learning outcome is explain the different signs that comprise language. So again, the teacher needs to pay attention to the word explain. So the students here need to explain, and the assessment task given is a video clip presentation, which is also another perfect fit for these intended learning outcomes. So as we can see in the first intended learning outcome, first assessment task rather, it is a written exam, but a video clip presentation is also a great way to assess or the students' explanation, because the students can present their ideas verbally orally. The student can present their ideas orally instead of writing. So they can explain it, they can discuss it, they can do it in various forms such as a PowerPoint presentation, reporting, and many more. So we can see here that the teaching activities is viewing session, which is also perfect and fits perfectly with the intended learning outcome, because in viewing session, the students will be watching educational videos, watching images, signs or symbols. So it will really help them understand the different signs that comprise language, because we're talking about signs here. So it needs visuals. It cannot be explained. I mean, it can be explained through words, but it can be enhanced if there are visuals or visual aids. So a viewing session is really perfect for this. So my conclusion for this explanation is that why did I say that it is good that these three needs to be aligned? So as what I've answered here, it creates an organized way of learning, and it enhances learning as it adds relevance between the objectives and task activities. So how important is relevance really? So let me put it this way. Say for example, you are teaching a math subject and you are trying to assess the students' understanding about the new topic that you have discussed, which is multiplication. Well, for you to assess the students' understanding about the topic multiplication, you will not give them, or you will not make them write an essay about it, right? So it needs to be relevant, it needs to be aligned. So if your topic is math, if your topic is multiplication, then your way of assessment should be giving them math problems for them to answer and see if they know how to answer it, if they can figure it out. And for the activities, it can be math exercise such as flashcards instead of activities such as buzz sessions. So yeah, it is very important that it is aligned, because if it isn't aligned, then the students will be having a difficult time grasping the lessons, or they will be having a difficult time even understanding it. So it will also give the teacher a perfect opportunity or a perfect means of assessing their students and seeing if they learned something. So that would be all for my part, and thank you.